Okay, everybody, today is Wednesday, December 17th. We're 2 days from 3i Atlas's closest position to Earth, and it's incredible what it's doing on its closest position to Earth. I really hit the mother lode this week with all my data on 3i Atlas, pointing to Egypt, pointing to the Giza Plateau and the pyramids, and the ancient wisdom of the ancient star keepers. You know, I love these astronomers today who think the ancients didn't know anything and they know everything because they have telescopes. And they post comments in my, I'm getting a lot of traction in my Medium articles, and some of them just get so frustrated because they just don't understand the temples. And as I've demonstrated at Jerusalem and Bethlehem, on winter solstice to Christmas, the sun sets at the Great Pyramid complex of Giza, and that means these temples are aligned to the heavens on purpose, because they're not about what's happening on the ground. They are what's happening on the ground, because what's happening on the ground is consciousness. And consciousness has these alignments to the heavens. And of course, the ancient world, the ancient Hebrew world, the ancient Christian world, the ancient Egyptian world, the ancient Greco world was I don't want to use the word concerned. They were enlightened to the heavens and what the heavens were doing. And yes, there are you could call it political things, you could call it earthly powerful things, manifest in human consciousness, in the timing of what is happening in the heavens. But the greatest concern of the heavens is understanding, being a flight navigator and wanting to know where you go next. And so for the ancient Egyptians, it was clear they wanted to know where the heavens were and where they were being directed in the afterlife. And I would say the greater portion of the Christian religion is the same. There's nothing in the Christian religion that we understand that doesn't give absolute importance to the kingdom of heaven. And yes, the kingdom of heaven can be experienced as a gateway within, but Jesus' message and why he's so willing to be sacrificed is he knows where he's going next. And if he didn't know, and he thought, and he was not confirmed and affirmed about where he's going next, you would think he'd be incredibly nervous up there on the cross. But he's absolutely certain, and he's absolutely certain where he's going next is better than here, obviously, because in this place, actually, I just finished reading this incredible book by James Tabor on the history of the Mother Mary. And actually, when she's growing up as a child, there are tens of thousands of crucifixions of the Jewish people by the Romans, tens of thousands, and her family is really just struggling to survive and exist and avoid the crucifixions and save their precious little daughter, which is later to be the mother of Christ. So with 3i Atlas giving us these angles, it just gave us another one. And again, the point of this is, because some people ask me this, I mean, yeah, some people don't want to know what's going on in the sky above them. They want to keep their head to the ground. That's why I'm mentioning this, is the motions of the heavens, the positions of the heavens, and the angle of the rising and setting is part of the way the ancient people connected to their own interior experience, to God, what Gary Schwartz called I love the way Gary Schwartz created the acronym, the grand organizing designer for the word God in the English language. So here we go. Like, I'm sitting on the mother lode, an absolute mother lode, which I hope to reveal in the next inner circle, which will be Christmas Eve, it looks like. December 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, yeah, on December 24th. But what I'm going to reveal today is really equally stunning. So where we're going to start is first looking at what's going to happen on the 19th. So the 19th here's my model, and I've cleared out a lot of my other supposed comets out of the scene. I've turned it upside down. There's 3i Atlas, and this now it's a red and purple line is its trajectory line, and I can see what's going on. And so what I did, I took a screenshot of this and I brought it into Photoshop, and the miracle occurred this morning. And I already knew, I'm so good now at looking at angles with the eye. I know what it's going to be when I get to my calculator. So if we remember that, just to understand that the presentation of the jet angles, firstly, clearly has been solidified to represent one of the three most sacred angles in the ancient Egyptian world is the 26 degrees. And the 26 degrees, and tiny bit of change is of utmost importance to the ancient people, because something is happening at that angle that cannot be overlooked. And so here we go. So we got Photoshop here. This is where I am. And I did this morning knowing what the angle was going to be. And I was dead on the money. Share screen. There we go. So, okay, so this is December 19th at its closest to Earth. And at its closest to Earth, if I take my protractor, and you can see at the bottom here, there's a slight curve in this bottom line is the trajectory of 3i Atlas. So I'm measuring off its trajectory, and I've centered my compass on the trajectory line, and Atlas to Earth is 64 degrees. Okay, and of course 64, if you take 90 minus 64 degrees in a quadrant, it's 26 degrees. So that means from Earth to Atlas is 26 degrees, which I have in the red down here. And from Atlas to Earth is 64 degrees. Again, so which is the complementary, right? It's the same thing with the angle of the Great Pyramid of Egypt. If the Great Pyramid of Egypt is 38 and change, between 38 and 39, the complementary is 51. If the angle of the Great Pyramid is just under 52 degrees, the complementary angle is 38 to 39 degrees, which is the angle. So the three most sacred angles are the angle of resurrection, which is the complementary angle of the Great Pyramid slope itself, 38 to 39 degrees, and the angle of the Great Pyramid itself at a shaving under 52 degrees, and are 26 degrees, which sometimes varies between 26 and 26.3 degrees, and the 0.3 degrees could possibly be to shifting of the Earth. It can also be actually a correct number that it is 26.3 degrees. But when you round the numbers off and then you work from the rounded off number to the exact decimal position, you start to get really, really clear. So remember, why is it when it's closest to Earth? So now we have all three angles exemplified by 3i Atlas on these three most profound dates. So we have its closest position to Earth, we have Christmas Day, and we have Orthodox Christmas Day. And of course, Christmas Day, a lot of people argue this a lot of people say, well, that isn't Jesus' birthday. No, it's always about the 3 days after the marker. So the marker is the winter solstice. 3 days after that is Christmas on most years. Some years the solstice is the 21st of December, but recently most years it's the 22nd. And Orthodox Christmas being 3 days after winter perihelion, when Earth is closest to the sun, is January 4th, and plus 3 days is January 7th. So the Eastern Orthodox churches celebrate Christmas on January 7th. So on all three of these marker dates, we have 3i Atlas exemplifying the three most sacred angles. See, again, redundancy is really the rule to confirm a message. It's like a teacher with a giant chalkboard, and again, mainstream astronomers miss this because they don't know what these dates mean. Why is 3 days after winter perihelion and 3 days after winter solstice so important in the heavens above? So as above, so below. So this is a huge, perfection, because it's already demonstrated that the angle of the jet. So let me go to my the angle of the jet was at 26 degrees, and that would mean, you'd think the heavens were going to open on the 19th, which is in 2 days, because what 3i Atlas does with this, okay, let me come back to this article, is it's setting the stage, and it was slowly perfecting this jet angle here, taken by this astronomer, which is the jet and the anti-jet, or the tail and the anti-tail, right? And when you look in a three-dimensional axis, the observer on Earth is the only one in the solar system who sees the orientation of 3i Atlas at the 26 degrees. And of course, the 26 degrees, documented by Peter Le Mesurier, connects the Great Pyramid of Egypt to Bethlehem, right? And then the Dendera temple bulbs, thanks to Annette, who went there in person with a protractor, because you can't measure the angle of these from a photograph. You won't be accurate. She did it in person and confirmed that the tilt angle of these transmitters, receivers, are at the Dendera temple, are being pointed up at the 26 degree angle, which means they're either transmitting or receiving something in the heavens at that angle. There's a coil inside. Some people have likened these to light bulbs, but we can see, on this baseline down here, what looks like kind of like a power transformer, which might be, and there is a cord going into these giant filament tubes, the filament being the inside, represented by the snake. And, some people think the Egyptians, they take it literally rather than symbolically, that they actually had snakes inside of these tubes, and somehow there was a function to this. And why are they putting snakes in tubes and pointing them at the 26 degree angle? The 26 degrees, we know, points to probably the alignment of the real Star of Bethlehem. And again, the setting angle on the Star of Bethlehem is Fatima, Portugal. So here is the Dendera temple complex. And so, again, on the 19th, which is in 2 days at its closest to Earth, it will be Earth to 3i Atlas is 26 degrees. The point 3, if there is a point 3, you won't see. You won't see that. In fact, whatever it's tracking in the heavens over thousands of years actually migrates. This temple, the Dendera temple complex, is part of my huge discovery that I think is the culmination for the message of 3i Atlas to Earth. Where it's pointing to is going to blow everybody's minds, but it's way bigger than that. All of these temples, when seen from above, are inside of an incredible matrix. See, there's Annette with her fingers and showing me the 26 degrees right there on site. Really perfect that this is all happening. I mean, just the fact that this is happening, and then what's happening at on the 19th, confirming that, it would tell me, at the very least, we're getting a chalkboard lesson, at the very least. Because why? Because it's trying to teach us something we missed. Something we missed. And it's doing it redundantly. So when I go to, let's see, I go to my profile and I go to my articles. Okay, here we go. I just want to recapture this before I go into what is today is going to be the core of 3i Atlas that gets measured by an astronomer, and what's in the core is incredible. So remember, so here's our other angles. So on the 19th, 3i Atlas is it's 26 degrees to Earth, but on Christmas Day, Atlas to Earth is 51.853972 degrees, which is the slope angle on the surface of the Great Pyramid, and you can see its complementary angle up here, 38.146028. So that's between 38 and 39 degrees. And actually, the three pyramids at Giza, all three of them are slowly getting, Khafre and Menkaur's pyramids are working towards 39 degrees, which means what they're tracking in the heavens above, and that's what's important, is something we can't see, which I believe with math and evidence is the hyperdimensional solar system. So here we go to Orthodox Christmas. In Orthodox Christmas, again, you couldn't see the difference between 38 and 39 degrees on this size scale. So what I'm seeing is 39 degrees, which is one of my digits inside the 40. This is Orthodox Christmas, which is January 7, 8, 9. It's actually January 8th for the Egyptians in the Orthodox world, the Egyptian Christians. So this is it. It's demonstrated all three of these angles. Now when we go to the core, so the core is where there is huge news. And I have to find my core article. And we see it right here. And did I... Okay, my core is in Photoshop, it seems. The core. Here it is. Here it is. The core. Okay. Here it is. The core. So, relying on, I mean, all praise and thanks to the amateur astronomer community here, because the amateur astronomer community is giving us more data than NASA, and we know what happened on Mars, and there's so much on Mars. I'm going to have to backtrack to Mars when I'm ready to go to Mars, because NASA lost contact with the Mars Maven orbiter on Mars on the 4th of December and has not regained contact with it. The Mars Maven is responsible for giving us data on the atmosphere of Mars. The key is the atmosphere. And in my intuitive and mathematical insights, I believe 3i Atlas did something to the atmosphere on Mars to possibly adjust it, to possibly seed it, and activating its magnetic nickel core, because 3i Atlas is made of nickel. And that, I mean, again, when you go on an intuitive level, or we could call it a psychic level, you don't have as much data to prove a hypothesis. But that's okay. That's what remote viewing is about. And that's why the Central Intelligence Agency studied remote viewing, because they realized it was highly valid. So when we get to the core of 3i Atlas, and this is done by an astronomer. I'll click on this to go to Liana Dreams. Liana Dreams is an amateur astronomer on Medium, and has quite a bit of traction. And it says right here, for almost 3 months, the whole world has been observing three-eye atlas, from professional astronomers to backyard enthusiasts with their own telescopes. Everyone is trying to understand the geometry of its shape. Yes, that's because we see a lot of geometries manifesting in the surrounding area to the nucleus. It seems to be projecting geometries. And of course, angles are how you build polygons, many-sided geometries. So this person takes this image of three-eye atlas and says that she puts it in this person puts it in a software. So it says right here, when I look at three-eye atlas's core, I see nothing but a blinding sphere, just a bright featureless light. But the moment I hover the cursor over it, the magic begins. Brightness values start rushing towards the center like a gravitational waterfall. And then it becomes obvious. The core is layered. But how do you actually see these layers? I asked my AI assistant, pointed me to a powerful tool called DS9 Contour Parameters. I followed this hint, and now I want to share what I found in 2 parts. So this astronomer takes the core of three-eye atlas and runs it through this algorithm, and this is the core. So we've seen geometry in what you might call the halo surrounding three-eye atlas, because none of our cameras are able to get close enough to it to see the core itself. And so this is what happens. Is you see this polygon down here? This is what happens at the core level. And so this person calls it the cupcake. This is the evolution to the cupcake and the tetragon. So the article is really worth noting. So when I come back to, I just knocked myself out of the viewer there. When we come to the core, this is miraculous. This is utterly miraculous because it's consistency, consistency, consistency. So what I did is I took the core, and this is in 2 dimensions, of course, and I mapped the angles. And there they are. And in fact, this person responded to me in thanks that I took this core into Photoshop, found the center, and there it is. The slope angle of the Great Pyramid here, the complementary angle, the angle of resurrection of the Great Pyramid here at 38.146, the slope angle of the Great Pyramid 51.853972, and on the opposite end of the geometry, it repeats. It's over here. So it's on 2 sides of the polygon. This is the core. I don't see 26 degrees, but I see 2 of my most sacred angles inside of the Great Pyramid's matrix of angles. And there are other angles in the Great Pyramid. I mean, I know all of them. There are other angles. And it's actually thanks to Robert Temple, who wrote The Mystery of the Sphinx in Egyptian Dawn, The Crystal Sun, who got me onto angles. He's the one who got me onto angles. And Stan Tenen, of course, angles is equal to angels, where the angels are. The angles are pointing the way. So at the very core, we have, that's why I call it the real architect, right? Because the architect of the Great Pyramid obviously knows what these angles are. Of course, with the slope here is not the finished slope of the Great Pyramid, because the white line, 144,000 white casing stones to the Great Pyramid were removed by Muslim robbers, and they built a mosque in Cairo out of those beautiful white stones. And little do they know that this is actually not an Egyptian monument. It is the missing temple to the Lord God in the book of Isaiah chapter 19. So they made a grave mistake. And I don't know what happens with that. So it's just ignorance, not understanding what you're doing and making assumptions. So they really, really badly damaged. In fact, at the time of Christ, this would have been covered in the beautiful white shining casing stones. So when we come to the architect, and it's all about the architect, I could only suggest that 3i Atlas, is it the architect? Or is the architect of 3i Atlas the same as the architect of the Great Pyramid of Egypt? Because it's got its, you see, so if this is your baseline here, and you turn your head, this angle here, right here, is the slope angle of the Great Pyramid, right here. And of course, this is complementary angle of resurrection. I mean, this is absolutely stunning. It's stunning. So when I take my quadrants, so all of these angles, 47, 17, and 47, add up to 111 degrees. Isn't that interesting? And these angles here, 69, 69 plus it's complementary 11. These two here are 90 degrees. So these two are 90 degrees. This is 111 degrees. This is 69, right? So when I add them all up, the sum of the angles is 360 degrees. So the sum of my angles is 360 degrees. So that means that it's perfect. It's perfect. So why is it that 3i Atlas is as a teacher with a chalkboard with the Earth watching, pointing to what happens on the Giza Plateau? That means it's proprietary to the Giza Plateau, but it isn't. It turns out it is not only proprietary to the Giza Plateau, it is proprietary actually to the Jerusalem Temple Complex and Solomon's Temple. Actually the Ark of the Covenant, I've discovered, and the birthplace and time of Christ. So does it matter that it's, some people argue that it's Jesus' birthday is not December 25th. Well, in all evidence, what we know about the dating of, in fact, I should have this. I should have it bookmarked right here. Okay, this is thanks to Shuro. Shuro, you're the one who pointed me into this article at one point when we were looking for establishing the date of Jesus' birth. Is the best fit for the date of birth of Jesus is the week of the 13th of August in 5 BCE. Right, so again, Jesus' birth ranges between 3, 4, and 5 BCE. And what happens in the heavens, again, it's so important to understand what this all means, because it all comes down to the Star of Bethlehem and what it really is. Because what's happening in the heavens is what the ancient people in this part of the world were mastering. So the Jerusalem Temple Complex, before I go to the birth of Jesus, I just want to clarify before I forget that, and I have that graphic. And the whole point, when we learn something new, the more times you repeat it and you see how it all corresponds, and it keeps corresponding, is how we really get clear about what's actually occurring. So again, 3i Atlas, like a teacher on the chalkboard. Again, its interior angle at the core has the angle of the pyramid itself, but also the angle of the rising sun at summer solstice here in the east intersects Bethlehem, Jerusalem, all of the temples in Jerusalem, which is Dome on the Rock, the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, where Jesus' body was laid, and the Solomon's Temple, and Bethlehem, the birthplace of Christ, is just a tad south. And we can see the rising sun is received at the Great Pyramids and Cairo. And then in the winter, if I move this clock up to Bethlehem, the sun sets from Jerusalem to Bethlehem at the Great Pyramids on the winter solstice and also Christmas Day. So with that, this angle 51.853972, which is really 52 degrees, rounded off, is exemplified by our teacher 3i Atlas with its jets, producing on this particular date this right from the angle of this long streaking line of dots, which of course are, according to Avi Loeb, might have been the date that 3i Atlas released its subcraft, which it would be sending those subcraft to Earth. And he is ready. I mean, Avi Loeb is ready with his Project Galileo UFO detector system all in place. So this angle from this line to here is the slope angle of the Great Pyramid. So it did this. Again, this is where the redundancy is. So see, here you go. Here's your 52 degrees. Again, I can't see, the shaving of the difference. And this is when the jet was not 100% perfected yet. And this angle over here on the left side equaled the date that 3i Atlas did this. Kind of like using, and this is where I did it, the angle of the sun, November 20th to 23rd, which is when the photograph was taken. And of course, that the counter position to that angle would be the 20th to the 23rd of May. So on the lower end, it's November 23rd. On the upper end, it's the 20th to 23rd of May. So again, just being redundant to show what it did. So when we come back to the calculations that are done, because we have two calendars. At the time of Christ, we were on the Julian calendar, and the Julian calendar still had a leap year to absorb. It's 365.256, and the decimals keep going days per year from the 6 on, meaning 365.25 is all we absorb in a leap year. So over time, I think I calculated every 156 years or something like that, we fall out another day to the perfection of the heavens, and then another 156 years. And of course, in a single human lifetime span, you're not going to see an error. But over hundreds and hundreds of years, the error appears. So the fit for the birth of Jesus is the week of the 13th of August on the Julian calendar. But that's not where that date falls on our current calendar. And this research is all done. I mean, it takes a long time to go through this. I've gone through the whole thing. And I know, again, I'm looking for the truth. I'm not looking for a fictional story. I'm looking for the truth. As a consciousness explorer, as a person who has met Christ, Mary Magdalene, and the Mother in blinding visions, because of the power and the magnitude of those visions and what they did to me, I just wanted to know the real truth of what really happened. Wow, it's really raining here all of a sudden. So this article puts it in August 13th, 5 BC. So that would put it on our current calendar. This is the week of August 13th. So the 21st of August on our current calendar would not be, would fit inside of that, but then there's other dates around that it could possibly be. So I mapped that. Because when you map the heavens corresponding to the earth below, you can see the connection forming. So what is the secret? What is the secret? And I'm going to give you a little preview. Hope we don't lose sound because of my extreme rain here, which means extreme snow up above me. There's no question what the secret of the Giza Plateau is. Because the secret of the Giza Plateau is clearly, Annette knows this, of course, the star Sirius. And the star Sirius and Sirius helical rising is the clue for where this is all going, because there is a massive connection to the star Sirius and what is known as Sirius helical rising, which is when the star Sirius is a superior method. Of course, is the brightest star in the sky. So when you have the brightest star in the sky, and you have a star that is a not only a timekeeper, because when the sun rises on Sirius helical rising on a position at the temple, which is the Great Pyramid complex, it only occurs on a certain date, but that date shifts over cycles of time. So I've mapped it over cycles of time, and I've mapped it to its true purpose. And the layout, this is one of the things that scholars don't know, because Solomon's temple, so let's go back to Moses. So Moses and his God, who lands on the Sinai, and Moses is given instructions by God to build the Ark of the Covenant. And the Ark of the Covenant is placed in a cubic tent that is 10 by 10 proper cubits. And actually, at the time of Moses, you didn't have all these cubits like we have today. You had a common builder's cubit, and you had the royal Egyptian cubit. Moses was trained in all things Egyptian, which is written in the Bible, I think in the book of Numbers. So, the Queen's Chamber in the Great Pyramid is 10 by 10 royal cubits. So Moses is putting his Ark of the Covenant and the 12 staffs for the 12 tribes in the Ark of the Covenant, and extending beyond what is known as the tabernacle complex of tents, beyond the Holy of Holies tent, is called the Holy Place, which is a rectangle 10 by 20 cubits, which is the same measurement as the King's Chamber in the Great Pyramid. It's really important to go back to this, because why it's setting the stage for the proof that the ancient Hebrews also, I don't want to say worshipped, I want to say they were perfectly aligned in their temples to the star Sirius. This is the tip of a giant iceberg of what I've uncovered. So if you go to Moses's tabernacle, here we go. This is a good image of the tabernacle. Here we go. This is great. Okay. So, because this is pre-Solomon's temple, which is Jerusalem. Solomon's temple 1, and there's Solomon's temple 2. So, this is it. The tabernacle of Moses, God's heavenly pattern for our spiritual transformation. The outer court. This is it right here. So this square complex here in the tent is where the Ark of the Covenant and the staffs are placed, which is 10 by 10. Well, this is exactly the layout of the Queen and King's chamber in the pyramid by measurement and by design. By design, the architect, go back to the architect, must be one and the same. In fact, Le Mesurier clearly illustrates this in his book, The Great Pyramid Decoded, published in the late 1970s. In fact, when he goes through all of his evidence, he comes to the same conclusion that I did. Of course, I'm relying on him that the Great Pyramid of Egypt is none other than the missing temple to the Lord God in the land in the book of Isaiah, chapter 19. So this is the core. And where this event occurs, where this goes next, is all of the measurements. Okay, so I'll stop screen share there, and I'll go to what's called Solomon's Temple. Solomon's Temple 1 and 2. Of course, so Jesus is here we go. Second Temple, Solomon's Temple on Wikipedia. Of course, Solomon's Temple was destroyed. Solomon's Temple 2. So this is the first temple. So what happens with the temple is the measurements multiplied by a factor of 2, which means their ratios remain the same, but they're built in over time, 2 different times. So this is your first temple. So it's the same exact design. It's the same layout. And then you've got the destruction location within the old city of Jerusalem, right here. Right? Temple Mount is the location. A lot of people know this. But what they don't know is the connection to the architect is one and the same as the architect of the Great Pyramid. It's one and the same. That's why all these alignments occur and come back to the Great Pyramid. And the Great Pyramid complex of 3 pyramids and the Sphinx are in alignment to what is in the heavens above. And what is in the heavens above are these invisible hyperdimensional planets, which we've documented well here in the inner circle, the upper 9. And that 3i Atlas's bullseye was the epicenter of the hyperdimensional model, being 591. So this is it. What we don't know, because there's very little surviving literature about the temple itself, what did the temple observe in the heavens above? And this again is the tip of a giant iceberg, because it is serious. It's not only Sirius, it's Orion and Pleiades, actually, because all of them, I'm going to demonstrate, have perfect. In fact, what we have left of this is so fragmented. Yes, we have descriptions in the books of Moses to certain measurements, but what we don't know is, for example, let's go for a second to this, because in the holy place, which extends beyond the Holy of Holies in the complex, is the 7-candle menorah. And of course, I wouldn't be the first person to suggest that those 7 candles are reflective of the 7 stars of the Pleiades. So here we go. Now, this is a really good diagram here. You're going to see this next week, which is Christmas Eve. It's going to be so mind-blowing. Because if everything is pointing, if 3i Atlas is a giant city, designed by the architect, and the architect is the grand organizing designer, God, then it all comes down to this. Because the Holy of Holies, I mean, this is written in the Gospel of Philip, which I'm going to pull up because I have a little bit of time left. So this is a great diagram of, this is Holy of Holies, this is the holy place. The holy place is where the seven-candled menorah is, and the high priest operates only 1 day per year, which is Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement of Sins, which is when 3i Atlas reached Mars. And we went over this. The alignment occurred at Mars of the planets and 3i Atlas on Yom Kippur. So again, the same complex is inside the Great Pyramid. That's my whole point. This is the Queen's Chamber, the Holy of Holies. This is the King's Chamber, the Holy Place. The measurements are the same as they were in Solomon's temple by design. So when you understand that, see, we're taught there's a division, that the Western Christian is taught that there is no Egypt, that all of Egypt is somehow evil. Yet Bethlehem was inside of Egypt in 13th, 14th century before Christ, the time of Moses. Slowly, Egypt loses hold of its territories, which extend all the way through the entire Palestine, all the way into Syria, and what we know as Egypt today. And so we have this idea that Egypt is somehow bad because Moses had a fight with the Pharaoh. Yet, why does God send Moses to be rescued and raised in Egypt and trained in all things Egyptian? Why does the angel Gabriel send the parents of Jesus and Jesus into Egypt to be raised? So obviously it was all Egypt. So it doesn't have to send Jesus as an infant to Egypt. It's all Egypt. It's just that it's being ruled by the Romans. So first it was Alexander the Great, 3rd, 4th century, then it's the Romans. So my point in setting the stage for what's coming on Christmas Eve is to understand that there's all these temples that the ancient Jews and Hebrews and the very earliest Christians adhered to, and then there's the Egyptians themselves, with the idea that somehow the Great Pyramid of Egypt was not by design of the architect, of the God of... I don't want to say the God is exclusive to the Hebrews because it's really a distinction between Pharaoh wanting to be God and Moses having a duel and a fight with Pharaoh, with the staff of Aaron and the staff of Moses, and the battle and the parting of the Red Sea and all of it. But I want to say that we've lost something. We've lost something huge. The Gospel of Philip, this is really important, which of course is removed from the canon. This is really important in here. Because in the Gospel of Philip, what does Jesus do? Not only is it clear here, and what made the Gospel of Philip famous, is it appears that in Philip, that Mary Magdalene is his wife. Or Mary Magdalene is far more important than we can possibly imagine. But it also says in here that, I'm going to try and find it here in this, because I know this very well, where Jesus declares that he is the Son of the Holy of Holies. So now you can see what the Holy of Holies is. You can see there's a Holy of Holies in the Great Pyramid, which is the Queen's Chamber. And you can see, here it is. As for the wisdom who is called the barren, she is the mother of the angels and the companion of the Lord, Mary Magdalene. Jesus loved her more than all the disciples and used to kiss her often on her mouth. And why do you love her more than all of us? And Jesus said to them, why do I not love you like her? When a blind man and one who sees are both together in darkness, they are no different from one another. When the light comes, then he who sees will see the light, and he who is blind will remain in darkness. I think what he's saying here is their marriage had to be secret. It had to be secret for a very profound reason, which is why it's not even disclosed to the rest of the apostles. But when you get deep into this, you come into what is known. Here it is. The Lord did everything in a mystery, a baptism and a chrism and a Eucharist, and the redemption and the bridal chamber. So he starts to go into three. Here they are. There were three buildings specifically for sacrifice in Jerusalem. The one facing the west is called the Holy. Another facing the south was called the Holy of the Holy. The third facing the east, which is the rising position, was called the Holy of Holies, the place where only the high priest enters. Baptism is the holy building. Okay, so that's facing the west, the setting position. Redemption is the Holy of the Holy, and the Holy of the Holies is the bridal chamber. Now, we know the bridal chamber is evident in the canonized scriptures. But we don't know who the bride is in the canonized scriptures. And I've really, really studied this. Who is the bride that Jesus is talking about? And is it, according to the church and their limited understanding of it, they believe the bride is that Jesus is marrying his community of apostles, which I think is just absurd. Doesn't make any sense. Baptism includes the resurrection and the Holy of Holies is the bridal chamber. Baptism includes the resurrection and the redemption. The redemption takes place in the bridal chamber. But the bridal chamber is that which is superior to, and there's missing text, and this is where it gets broken, Jerusalem. So he's talking about the Jerusalem. Those called the Holy of the Holies. The veil was rent. That's when Jesus was crucified, the lightning bolt strikes the temple, Solomon's temple, and the veil that surrounds the Ark of the Covenant in the Holy of Holies is torn, and it's literally this thick of solid linen. And apparently the temple itself was badly damaged by this strike. So in here, somewhere, Jesus continues to speak in the enlightenment of these three rituals and these three buildings. But we don't know of three buildings. We know of one, which is the entire complex of Solomon's temple. And there are two main chambers in the temple. There is the holy place and the Holy of Holies, but there's not three. We don't know where the third one is. But then Jesus says that he is literally himself the Holy of Holies. And what lived in the Holy of Holies, which was the Shekinah was the sphere, or you might even describe it as a plasma, living light being actually lived in there. And it was so bright when you entered the Holy of Holies that a person had to be veiled or they could actually go blind. That's where the veil actually comes from. The whole concept of the veil over the face is in understanding that the brightness of the resurrection is so bright that you cannot look upon it and live for very long. And I know when I met Christ multiple times, his face is so bright that I could only look for a second each time. So Jesus himself is actually declaring that he is the Holy of Holies. This is the only manuscript that describes this, that describes Jesus' relationship to the temple and the Holy of Holies. there's no other place except for the bridal chamber, and is mentioned in the canonized Gospels, but it's very fragmentary, it's very mysterious, the language that he's using. So again, these are languages that point, and symbols that point to in ancient Egyptian understanding. And you're going to see Christmas Eve, because it's going to take me a while to assemble all this with graphics, this stunning, massive iconoclasm. I mean, that really brings Christianity back to the ancient Egyptian position. And it brings the religion of the ancient Hebrews back to the ancient Egyptian position. So we don't know where the schism occurred. We know that the Pharaoh himself wanted to be God, just like King Herod wanted to be God on earth. He wanted to be the king of the Jews. It's really more of a battle of Jesus threatening Herod's position as king. And it's really the same with Moses and Pharaoh. Moses is really living as an Egyptian. If all of Egypt was evil, don't you think his God would have him removed from it? It's very clear in Isaiah chapter 19 that Egypt needs to be reformed because it's gone out of calibration with its original blueprint and design to what it was worshiping, instead of the embodiment of kings thinking that they were somehow divine when they're not. Just like Herod is not divine, and Pharaoh is not divine. But Moses clearly is, and Jesus clearly is. So there's something we lost, and I think the message is going to bring it all together. So next week we're going to see a stunning message, which I think is the culmination of the message of Three-Eye Atlas. So we know that God in the Old Testament is an architect, because everything, including Noah's Ark, has to be measured. He doesn't just say make a big boat and put all the animals in it. It's measured. It's 300 cubits. So, and then I think it's 100. It's I forget the width dimension of Noah's Ark. So, but everything God designs is exemplifying God as an architect, and there's a reason for the measurements to be